Hello and welcome to game number 1 for Computer Science 440, created by Alex Brown. In this video, I will be demonstrating my game as well as walking through my code so you see how it works. This is my H file. It's pretty basic in terms of an H file. I have my constructor and deconstructor, all the functions I'm going to use, as well as all of my private variables. I set the array size to 1,000, so there's enough words where each game you play, you'll likely not get the same set of words. My dictionary file is 15,000 words long, but 1,000 each seems sufficient enough. I did find this online, although I modified it heavily with regular expressions to remove words with less than 4 characters, apostrophes, capital letters, periods, that sort of thing. And overall, I'm satisfied with the file, even though it took a few attempts to get it how I wanted it. All right, on to main. The first thing I do is I check to make sure the dictionary file is working. Otherwise, the program will no longer run at all due to the return. And then I close the file afterwards. But it is reopened later in another function. I'm just closing it because of possible errors if you try to open something that's already open. I'll explain these later when I run the program. The first thing it does is launches my introduction to the game, which is this function. It's just a bunch of messages giving you instructions on how to play the game, and also the theme I created, which I will explain later. After all the messages are activated, it'll call the create list function. But first, I put some sleep counters in here so you have time to read the messages, so it all doesn't pop up all at once. And it also does not affect the game timer for the game right now, since nothing else, the threads are not active right now. So in the create lists, I open up the file again, I read in the first word, and this while loop will loop until it gets to the end of the file or until all 3 arrays are full. That's what this line is for. That way, if all 3 arrays are full, it will no longer read in anything further because there's nothing to store any longer. And the if statement is simply for when there are 4 or 5, they go into the small array. If the words are 6 and 7 word characters long, they go into the medium, and larger than 8 go into the large array. And afterwards, it'll exit the function, and it'll go back to this. Then the threads start here. As long as the game is not over at all, it will start both threads. And I'll move down here. I use this variable to tell if the player got an answer right or wrong based off of this loop. I activate my play game logic here, and I also pass in the current correct number of answers the player has right. So I'll go to the play game. That's this. This is the variable that's passed in. I pass it into this variable, and these are also all my game variables for each array. Since I use the random function, I use this so it's always random based on time. So it's not picking the same word like I used to have until I realized I needed this in here. And then I have another if statement based on how many correct answers they have. If they have 0 correct, they're only on level 1. If they have 1 correct, they're level 2, etc. And also based on the number of correct answers, it'll pick a word from that array. So if they have 1 or less, it picks a word from the smaller array and passes it into the word variable. If they have 2 or 3 correct, it picks from the medium, etc. Now, once you get down here, once it has chosen a word from one of the arrays, it'll scramble it. That calls this function, which simply passes the word into a string variable. I call the random shuffle function, and it returns the shuffled word. And then I have it pause very slightly here, not a big pause, just long enough to give some space to the player so it's not all going lightning fast. And then they have a chance to guess the word. And then based on their answer, it'll return true if they have the word correct and false otherwise. And this takes you back to main, where once this has completed, it'll check if increment was true and they do not have 5 correct answers already. If it satisfies this, I set the correct number, which is just correct plus plus, so it adds 1 to the current number of answers correct, and it sets this back to false. Now, if they get the word wrong, it'll display this message, and it'll loop back in here, and it'll pick an entire new word. So you only have 1 chance per word, but you have an infinite number of guesses. So it'll always give you a new word if you get it wrong. Now, I also have a little bit a parameter here to where I'll explain it later for now, once I get to the game. Anyway, once you have 5 correct answers, finished becomes true, and that will cancel the while loop. In the timer thread, there's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just the basic version. Once the time runs out, you set the timeout to true. All right. Then after the game is either timed out or the player gets all 5 right, it comes down here. If they timed out, it'll display the timeout message, which is just a simple message, which is this, just saying, well, you ran out of time, and then due to my theme, how shall you be punished? And that's all there is for that. And then it activates the game's end, which is this function. It'll pull the correct number of answers the player has right. This is just to make things nicer on the screen. And then you get a rating based on your performance. If you get hardly any correct, you get the lowest rank, which is Pit Dog, and you get flayed for being so bad at the game. If you get 2 correct, you're a bloodletter. You gave it your best, but you're ultimately not very good, and you get tortured to death. If you get 3 correct, as you can see, you get warrior, but you get hard labor because you did average. You get 100 lashes if you get 4 correct, which can hurt, but it's not as bad as the other 3, at least I think. And then if you get all 5 right through some miracle, you're free to go. I'll explain my theme a little bit. There's an old game I used to play called Elder Scrolls Oblivion. In that game, there's an arena that you can go to where you fight opponents, a typical gladiator arena, and you rank up based on how many people you kill. And Pit Dog is the level 1 starting rank, and Grand Champion is when you beat all of the people in there. And that's what I based my theme on for this game, where you're coming to the arena, but instead of fighting, you're doing brain teasers, you're unscrambling words instead. And yeah, that's where the rankings come from. And the punishments I made up, they're not from the game, they're just something I made up. And that's pretty much it. And then after the game ends, you're displayed a message that the game will self-destruct in 10 seconds. And then after 10 seconds, it closes. That's all there is to it. I believe I covered everything except the constructor up here, where I basically just, set everything to 0 so there's not any random garbage inside of it. And then my deconstructor has nothing in it because I do not use pointers. in this game. Here are my setter and getter, where I'm just incrementing correct. Normally you have a parameter in here, but since I'm only incrementing by 1, it's not needed. Originally, since I'm using all the variables inside of the CPP and H file, I really don't even need the set and get here as much. But when I ran into my 2 bugs that were preventing me from completing this game sooner, I added this in here just to make sure it worked correctly. Now for the 2 bugs, the first one has to do with this statement. Well, this fixes it. Is when the time ran out, you were still able to input a word guess, and it would display the incorrect message, and it would go back and give you another word. This was before I changed. I used to have 2 while loops inside my play game, so it would loop inside the function endlessly. But due to the first bug annoying me and I wanted to fix it, I moved it inside the thread instead. So basically, if the time runs out and you get it right or wrong, it won't do anything, and it just displays nothing. So this will not even appear, and it works how I intended. The bug is fixed that way. And then the other bug was where I had, when the time expired, it was not displaying the correct number of guesses the player made. And that was due to having this in 3 places. So it created an instance of each game. So it would always have, it would be right when I was inputting and got all 5 right, but it would be wrong when I timed out. And that was just due to being rusty with C++. So having it up here, it keeps everything in sync, so everything works correctly. I believe I covered everything. Now I will talk about this and then launch the game. This is not in the submitted file because this is just for the screencast. Basically, I just want to pause the game before it even starts in case I need to screen capture the game instead. Although right now I'm doing full screen, so I really don't need this anymore. But anyway, this will clear the screen afterwards since the pause displays a press any key to continue. I just wanted that to be erased. So that's what this line does. Onto the game. See, I press any key to continue, so it's waiting on me to press something so to make sure I'm ready to launch the game. Originally, I did not have those 2 lines in here because they weren't needed, but they are useful for the screencast. Now keep in mind when testing, I very rarely got past level 3. I did beat it once, but that was pretty close. Anyway, here we go. There's instructions. Here's the first word, and I am not sure what it is. Dose? No. Dose. There we go. All right, what would this word? DVDs? All right. This word looks familiar, but I'm not sure. I have no idea, so I'm just gonna skip it. And see, it gave me a new word. Sorry. I believe this is no, it's not instead. Looks familiar. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I'll just skip it instead. I do not know this word either. I'll just get a new word. Oh, I ran out of time. And now it'll self-destruct in 10 seconds, but I'm tortured to death. Darn. And then it closed. I'll run it a few more times to demo everything properly. As you can see, you have a little bit of time to read all the messages before the game actually starts, so it doesn't throw everything at the screen at you at once before you have a chance to react. Excuse me. All right, I got the first 2 words pretty fast. But things go downhill from here. I have no idea. Yeah, this is definitely not easy. Skip it. I have no idea what this is either. I'm gonna get bloodletter again, be tortured to death. No. Apparently I'm very bad at this game too. When I had my cheat code in where it displayed the word right for me, it was very easy, obviously. Once I took that out, I've been having a tough time getting past just level 3. I got tortured to death again. I'll run the game a few more times. Hopefully try and get level 5 at least on one of them. Here we go again. I have no idea. What would this word be? I have no idea. Definitely not as easy as it looks. No. What would this be? Oh, I'm gonna get bloodletter again. I don't know what it is. Oh no, I'm gonna get tortured to death again. Tortured to death is not a fun punishment. As you can see, it displays the message here. Maybe I should have paused it afterwards so you have time to read that, because sometimes you might not notice. I'll go ahead and take this out since I don't need it for the cast anymore, since I'm doing full screen instead of individual screen capture. All right, I'll run it one more time. See if I can beat it. Forms. Ports. Aw. No. Horse. Yep. Dream. No. I have no idea. Oh, so much for getting past level 3. Yeah. I'm bad at this game, apparently. Yeah, it's a pointer. Oh, I'm going to get tortured to death again. And it'll self-destruct. So you want to type something, nothing appears. Where before it would, even though it would still cancel the game later. Anyway, I believe that concludes this screencast for game number 1 from Computer Science 440. This game was created by Alex Brown, and I'll see you next time.